It's 2026, and if the last few years have felt less like chaos and more like something kind of quietly locking into place, you're not imagining that. If you notice that events keep arriving just preloaded with villains, emotions, branding, and solutions, like the argument was decided or prepackaged before anybody noticed it, I don't think that's random. So I'm not here to speculate or theorize or raise questions. I am here to show you why 2026 is going to be predictable. Let me be clear about what this is and what it isn't. This is not a timeline or a prophecy, and it's definitely not a list of things that might happen. So instead of asking what year something happens, the better question is, what does a system like this always do next? So keep in mind, these are opinion only, and they're not stated in any way that's asserting facts or accusations. So prediction number one, increased conflict with China. And it's not going to be through open war. It's going to be through pressure. China does not need to escalate anything. It just needs friction. Some delays in shipping, energy constraints, currency pressure, cyber disruptions. Each one's going to be small, but together they create a constant background stress. It won't be called aggression. The goal is just compliance with changing conditions. Number two, AI will replace a large percentage of artists. Music and writing, illustration, voiceover work, video. It's cheaper, faster, and endlessly compliant with humans. So for a very long time, creativity was the last place that humans felt irreplaceable. Even when jobs were automated, art still felt really personal to us, and that's gone. So number three, the loneliness epidemic is going to accelerate. It's going to be very quiet, and most people assume loneliness comes from isolation, and that's not quite right. Loneliness comes from friction. Human interaction carries more friction than it used to. Every conversation feels a lot heavier, and politics are leaking into everything. One wrong sentence can turn just a normal conversation between people into a big problem. And you're going to see this show up everywhere.
I literally lived this because I just did 2 videos about my friend attacking me physically and just shutting off all conversation. He's literally talking about this in this video, how isolation isn't just relegated to physical isolation, but it's to friction, where people are just blowing up in conversation and everyone's afraid to talk to each other, afraid to have open communication. And so even in public places, when you're surrounded by people, you feel really isolated and alone. And how he's pointing out that isolation makes you more malleable and controllable, right? And also too, he's talking about how division is the aim, right? So there's a lot of topics that are hot trigger topics that are prime division tools. And I have another video after this about a specific topic of immigration as being a typical division tool because it hits so many points. But there's the Black Lives Matter, there's the Me Too. Those all can be politicized and be really divisive topics. There's immigration, another divisive tool. Trans is really easy to be co-opted as well as a divisive tool because a lot of people are really ignorant about trans, and it's been a very obscure issue for a long time. And a lot of trans people have been just totally under the radar, not wanting to be noticed at all, right? So a lot of actual dysmorphic trans are really upset about the notoriety they're getting because they just want to look like the opposite gender, which is their whole point of being trans, and hide, and just live their lives, But a lot of the activists have co-opted the movement and are giving trans a bad reputation. So, but these are all really good issues for divisiveness.
There's going to be fewer close friendships. There's going to be more surface level only interaction. Loneliness doesn't just make people sad, it makes us hyper suggestible. So loneliness is not some side effect of what's coming. It is one of the conditions that allows everything else to work. Moving on to number 5, there's going to be an explosion of artificial content like video, audio, documents, screenshots, entire events that never really took place. I would assume by this summer of 2026, the volume will be high enough that authenticity becomes really hard to prove in real life. And that will absolutely change human behavior, because once anything can be faked, everything can be denied. A compromising video comes up, oh, it's AI. An audio recording gets leaked out, it's a deep fake. Documents and evidence start to appear, it's generated somehow. When the world is just saturated with synthetic material, the burden of proof is going to flip backwards. It's going to feel like a lot of confusion, and then we'll kind of unplug because it's just too much. And confusion is incredibly useful if you study human behavior, because when people cannot tell what's real, they fall back on something a lot easier. And this is tribe, authority, and familiar narratives. Number 7, psychological operations become very visible this year. They're not going to disappear. They're going to get a lot more obvious, and you're going to hear it more often. This feels staged. This doesn't feel organic. This looks like a setup. And that creates a problem for influence, because influence, as you probably know, works the best when people don't notice it. So influence is going to be a lot less about persuasion and more about environment. So instead of convincing people what to think, systems are going to shape what's available to think with. So what content shows up, what gets buried, what feels normal to say out loud. And that is the 7th pressure point.
We need to be able to hold nuance and conversation and addressing these things, and we need to recognize that we're intentionally being manipulated. And the more rigid our thinking is around things, that's how cults control. I was in a cult. That's how they control. They control us not to question anything, that there's just like an established doctrine or dogma that has to be adhered to at all costs, no flexibility of thinking, and that's how you control people.
They're just idiots. This is vanity. This is more showing off.
How do we get to this place?
It's at the core of the whole progressive mentality. It is obsession with the self. If you look at these ICE protests.
Yeah, you're a Nazi!
Do you see them like, sorry, that's so terrible. It is a performance. It is acting out guilt rather than feeling it. They have cast themselves as the main actors. The immigrants themselves are irrelevant. They don't derive any sense of meaning from their nationality except in the negative. This is an issue that seems to divide people more perfectly than any other I know, and it's absolute. There is no way. I mean, the only comparison that I know of is Trump, right? You have to be on one side or the other. There is no middle ground. And as soon as you use a certain word, you will brand yourself as in one camp or
Do you mean
another.
immigration or
in
replacement?
immigration?
Yeah.
You know, in the same way that you cannot be middle of the road on Trump. You are either a Trump supporter or you're part of the good people. But there is no picking and choosing and saying some of these, this is what I try to do and I never get away with it. You know, I like some of his policies. I don't like the way he's going about pursuing them.
Oh, you can't do that?
No,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah, no, I've had trouble with that as well.
I've had trouble with that as well. You can't interject nuance. People hate moderates because it's like people want to be cult members, because it's like if you can't question things, if you can't see nuance, and you can't look at the complicated, multifaceted causes of certain issues, and you don't just put it in some simple black and white thing, then they just vilify you, I'm using this filter, the comic filter, because the whole world's a comic strip these days. So, and it's so crazy, you can't even believe shit is for real. Oh my God. Like, who would have thought? Like, I thought QAnon was a mofo like conspiracy theory, crazy ass shit. And now they're saying that there's facets of it that were actually real, and these like psycho nutbag actors that were saying all this shit, they thought they were nutcases and they were blacklisted. A lot of time, now they're saying that these mofos were right. That's like literally out of some sort of comic strip. If you're not allowed to question, bring nuance, that's a cult. And they need to realize they're in a mofo cult. But this also ties into what Chase Hughes was saying earlier, how there's certain issues as divisive tools, right? Because he was saying divisiveness and is a key component in being able to manipulate and control, because divisiveness facilitates isolation. Not even just physical isolation, but isolation. And like, I was having this experience of like being in public a lot of times and feeling alone even in public. Even when I would go out with friends, we'd go to a bar or some shit, because it happened at a bar, like some lady attacked me, you know? And this was before all this shit was like super prevalent. It's going to get more prevalent, like Chase Hughes was saying, like immigration, like, and Chase Hughes was saying like the Me Too, because that can be politicized. Black Lives Matter can be politicized. Immigration easily can be politicized. Trans is politicized. That are perfect issues for divisiveness, where there's just no critical thinking behind it. There's no nuance. There's no capacity to see some aspects are good and some aspects are bad, right? I mean, and you can't think that about like Trump or anything, like, and people just shut down conversation. They're on the side of the righteous, and I don't think reality works that way. Things aren't just black and white. Things aren't just cut and dry. Things are like, you know, people do that. Like I did another video about that. People do that with celebrities, right? Some people are just like, I love Michael Jackson. I don't give a fuck. Those people that are calling him a pedophile or liars, and they're just trying to get money. You know, the truth is that just because he was a musical genius and super talented and probably a nice person in a lot of aspects of his life does not mean he wasn't a pedophile. Like, two truths can be true at the same time, and people can't seem to accommodate that. I mean, we have been programmed since birth that villains in movies are just all bad. They're just horrible, like, and they even make the villains look grotesque. I mean, so I wanted to bring up this point in regards to how people can be really easily manipulated with rigidity of thought and with being on the side of the righteous and not being able to see nuance, right? People use that as a tool to hide. Like, so I'm using this psychopath nutbag as an example of this. Like when you're really rigid in your thinking and you can't see nuance and have flexibility in your thought, you can easily be manipulated. And that's what a lot of people do. Like, just like the Somalis in Minnesota, they're using the narrative of liberal whites in order to manipulate them. This guy was psycho killer. It says, why serial killer John Wayne Gacy escaped suspicion for so long. It says, for serial killer John Wayne Gacy, normalcy was camouflage. Despite being convicted and serving time for sodomy in 1968, Gacy established himself as a community fixture in Chicago. A local general contractor also worked as a part-time clown with ties to local politicians. So when young men in the area began disappearing, few looked in his direction. This is how people like this can manipulate you. They can create the mask of normalcy, which is a whole book written, you know, about how psychopaths and stuff manipulate people. And you can also be manipulated by the powers that be that want just to keep you locked in some kind of rage cycle or some righteousness cycle. They're placating on your ego's need to be right, wielding power and control through that. I really feel like people just need to start being aware that there's a lot more going on that we can't see and we don't know about because they're not telling us. Just kind of like how the Epstein files, you know, No one is telling us about that. And then even when they do come out, there's all these like redaction and all these. So it's like, what? Why are you even bother posting it if there's just a big black box covering up the whole thing? I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of gaslighting and manipulating and I'm glad I saw that video with Chase Hughes because it helped me clarify like how they're going about doing it, you know? And I just really feel like it's in our best interest as the public to be aware of this happening. And this is another one of those issues of immigration. And I just directly experienced it myself. Like I'm literally directly experiencing what Chase Hughes is talking about and what this lady's talking about.
Okay, so let's try and understand why that is the case, because it hasn't always been the case. Bernie Sanders, he, in his career, has been pro-borders, and there's certainly not. It was not always the case that the left was pro-open borders.
That's right, because the left wanted to protect the native workforce from unfair competition that will undercut their wages. Yeah. That used to be the standard Democratic line. But I guarantee you that even Bernie Sanders never says that anymore.
Right, he doesn't say it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's also the case that Obama deported millions. Biden, I mean, he let in millions, but he also did some deportations. It seems that it's maybe the mixing of it with Trump that has made it so contentious issue. But why?
Well, I think it's not a coincidence that I instinctively reach for Trump as the only parallel I know of, because they've become the same. It is, and Trump has crystallized the absoluteness of the different camps, and there is no mixing, and there is no moral compromise. I mean, as soon as someone picks up my novel, and let's say a progressive picks up my novel and detects that the book is not perfectly supportive of mass immigration, I become the evil author. I mean, it's just, that's it.
True that. Oh my God, like even when I try to interject nuance in the conversation with my friend of that it's foolish to attack ICE or any law enforcement, even prior to ICE, she saw that as a direct, you're not 100% sided with her. There's no room for nuance, right? And that's fascist thinking. That's the irony of it.
Why is it that that's become the case? Why is it that this is so emotive? Why is it that this is a profound moral sin to be anti-migration? Keep in mind, there are people on the left now who are losing their lives in the name of defending immigrants, or rather illegal immigrants. They're not just defending migration. They are defending illegal immigrants, criminals, because it's so important to them. I'm, of course, referring to Renee Good and Alex Pretty. That's
well, immigration in the modern era, in the the woke era, has always been in the mix, and I guess it first of all, it does connect with race. It connects with income inequality, another left-wing cause. It is about disadvantaged and therefore arguably victimized groups. It has to do with the whole idea of the white majority, the European majority, versus minorities, and of course the minorities are sacred, and that makes the white people the profane. I mean, it hits all of their favorite subjects.
This lady's bringing up really good points. Like one, like I said earlier, my friend, I don't even think she even knows any immigrants at all. She doesn't know any of them. She doesn't know any illegal immigrants for that matter. But she's got and a lot of times, and I've experienced this being part of the African American community, a lot of times there's a lot of white liberals can be very patronizing, which is why Malcolm X had said this quote, right? So the white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the black man, the white liberal has perfected the art of using the Negro as a pawn. And this is kind of a radicalized view because obviously the civil rights movement did get a lot of help from white liberals. They did. I mean, that's the truth of it. That's in the realm of nuance, right? But at the same time, this is also true. Like, this happened, and it's still happening. Like, we can kind of see it with what's going down in Minnesota with the Somalis kind of taking advantage of the local government, where they manipulated it to commit fraud. They've manipulated the psychology of the white liberal in order to commit that fraud, because the white liberal wanted their votes, So that is a form of manipulating, like, immigrants and brown people, And the thing is, the Somalis took advantage of that mindset in order to rip off, I mean, again, that is nuanced. It's not, a lot of these issues, again, are affecting all of us equally, and to be able to see both sides of it is what's going to help solve the problem. Like, you can't just sit there and let, the Somalis like rip off the state, right? I mean, but I think that happens a lot, where people are so afraid to be called out as a racist or this or that they can't bring nuance into the conversation, and that's disadvantageous to everyone involved, not even just the people that don't agree with the white liberals. It's disadvantageous to the white liberals as well, whether they realize it or not. And I feel like the white liberals don't realize how patronizing they are. They're so condescending and patronizing, and they're just so they don't realize, and that's what Malcolm X was pointing to, how patronizing, like, oh, the poor little black man, the poor little brown person. We got to help the poor little brown person, even though I don't even know if they really give a shit. I'm just saying, like my friend, my one friend, she doesn't know any illegal immigrants at all. She doesn't even know any. She's heard of some through somebody else, right? She doesn't even associate with like illegal immigrants, but she's like literally willing to forsake a friendship because she couldn't hold nuance in a conversation, But again, I feel like that's intentional. I feel like certain algorithms are being used to radicalize people, both left and right, and to facilitate division. So we can't look at any of these topics. This perspective, which I do think is true in a lot of cases, doesn't mitigate the truth that there were a lot of really highly active white people in the civil rights movement that highly affected and moved the civil rights movement in a really good direction. I mean, that both are true at the same time. And so, but, obviously Malcolm X was much more radicalized. And so there's all these different perspectives and views. But a lot of times, like, that's the thing. I don't get how, like white people can be, like my mom's a stone cold Trumper thumper, right? But it's true. He was saying, like, with the conservative white people, they just, like, their jaws are, you can see them clearly. You know what you're dealing with. Like, my mom is not a white liberal woman, right? Even though she married a black man, okay? And pursued my father. My dad's an introvert, and didn't, but he was really good looking, highly accomplished. He was in grad school, my mom was an undergrad, But my mom, she's a borderline. I'm doing a whole nother video on that. And she very well could have used my dad as a prop. My sister and I debate this, She wanted to get back at my racist granddad. My mom likes pushing buttons. So what do? If you want to get back at a man, her father, who she felt never loved her, mistreated her, was a violent drunk, whatever. What does she do? She brings home a really good-looking, tall, handsome, highly accomplished black man. Dude, that's how my mom rolls, don't you? My mom's really good at pushing buttons and shit. So my sister and I debate whether she did this shit on purpose. I'm just saying, okay, because my mom rolls like that. I'm just saying, okay. I don't know, man. I'm just saying, but I hate to say that, but it's true, because shit was so volatile back then, you know, like, I don't even know. I do think my mom did genuinely love my dad, but I don't know, like, again, like, a lot of her motives were mixed, you know, and crazy. And my mom's been racist to me even. My mom's been racist to me. She's told me I needed facial reconstruction because my nose is too big and my lips are too big. She said that when I was like 14, but that's typical borderline kind of behavior. I'll be talking about that in another video, but whatever. And my sister, who's also Scots Irish, looks almost like my mom's duplicate, right? She can't make fun of my sister's looks because she looks just like her, right? Some very pale, redheaded Scots Irish woman, right? But she still fucked with my sister by making fun of her acne. She couldn't make fun of her features, but that's what borderlines do. They'll find some reason to fuck your shit up and push your buttons. I'm just saying, okay? Anyway, but yeah, so I feel like a lot of these topics are really nuanced and complicated, and just to shut things off is putting yourself right where powers that want to control us want us. And we need to be aware of this.
And in combining them in one issue, it's the lightning rod. This is the third rail. This is what's going to make them more hysterical than any other subject.
And yeah, so it's the sacred cow. It's combined everything. It's the chimera of all of these important issues for them. What do progressives get wrong about migration? What do they? Listeners now will understand quite clearly that you're a conservative, not least because you've expressed it explicitly. But what do they not get about immigration? Why are they wrong to make this? To think what they do, assuming that they are wrong?
I think they reject the whole concept of the nation state, and yet they don't take responsibility for that. Right? They don't actually come out and say, we don't want to have countries. Because I don't think that you can have a country without a border, particularly in a world that many other people want in. I mean, you can probably have a country without a border if a lot of you people want out, but not if a lot of people want in. That therefore your country becomes fundamentally meaningless. It's just, and it certainly becomes culturally meaningless.
Lady makes a good point, because I was so confused. I was like, what the heck? Why are these people, like white liberals, fighting so hard for illegal immigration? But that really ties down to the point of they don't want borders. This land was stolen, you know, so we don't have any justification to initiate borders. But the truth is that they can say this really easily because they don't have to live with the consequences of open borders. They're not seeing it directly. They're not living it directly. There's a lot of people that are having to live with the destabilizing issues that come up when there's just an infiltration of illegal immigrants. It's very destabilizing to local communities, but they're not living with that. They don't live with the negative consequences, and they also benefit tremendously from the sovereignty of the country, and they're not having to live with the deprivation of those benefits. So it's like doesn't register in their head that the sovereignty of your country is what allows you to have the benefits that you do. Just kind of like when that one celebrity, Billie Eilish, said, you know, like you can't, you know, enforce stolen land or whatever in that speech, but she's not willing to give back her house.
You're already seeing a lot of people in the black community that have turned towards Trump because they're seeing what's going on with this immigration and how it's affecting them, and the fact that these people that are coming in that are illegal immigrants are getting so much aid that they're not getting. And they're like, this is fucking crazy. This is our community, and you're having these people come in, you're giving them food and money and shelter, and you won't do it for us, and we've been here forever, and we're Americans. This is
one of the things I see a lot in South Florida are people that have been in this country that maybe came from Cuba 45 years ago. They've worked here their entire lives. They retire. They get $800, $900, $1,000 a month from Social Security. And then they run into somebody who just got here from Cuba 3 months ago, is 29 years old, doesn't work, and is given $1,500 a month in benefits by our government because they're refugees. That refugee, a year later, is traveling back to Cuba 15 times. So you're a refugee fleeing oppression from a place that you now go back and visit 15 times the following year. And in the meantime, we're giving you Medicaid, food stamps, health care for your children, cash payments from the refugee fund. So imagine if you've been working here for 40 years and your Social Security check is smaller than the benefits going to a 28-year-old able-bodied person who just got here.
Let's go for it. Why should Black people care?
I don't think they should care, in all honesty, because immigrants or undocumented immigrants coming to this country, they are doing jobs that Black Americans wouldn't necessarily do. So I personally don't see why they should care.
What? What are those jobs?
What you mean, what is those jobs? They're the ones that work at a chicken farm. Have you ever met a Black American who work at a chicken farm, who work at a factory? Have you met them?
My
great-grandparents, my great-grandparents did those jobs. My grandparents did those jobs. And
okay, so those were your grandparents and your great-grandparents. But what about now? I'm speaking about what about now?
You asked a question. In Mississippi, Forest, Mississippi, and Tar Heel, North Carolina. These are things that just happened a few years ago. They did an ICE raid, and when the illegal immigrants were rounded up and deported like they should have been, guess who was there applying for those jobs? Black Americans.
I understand all that you're saying, and I don't know how much contact you make with undocumented immigrants or immigrants for that matter, but I do this as a passion. I do this as a career, and undocumented immigrants, they do not take away from Black Americans. First of all, they don't even, contrary to what you guys believe, that undocumented immigrants, that they're utilizing the welfare system, they're utilizing food stamps. First of all, as an undocumented immigrant, you cannot even have access to those kinds of programs that provided by the federal government. And true. I am telling you that immigrants.
So that's not true. This lady is not speaking truth from what I've experienced, because I dated a legal immigrant for 5.5 years. That was my toxic ex-boyfriend, right? He was illegal. He was brought over at 3. His mother brought him over as an infant, a toddler. For all intents and purposes, he was American because he was raised here. He went to all the schools here. He got kicked out of his house because he was acting like jacked up and fucked up and drunk, right? Because he had an addiction to alcohol problem. And so his stepdad, he had a sister who was legal because she was born here. His stepdad was illegal too. I think his brother was illegal. They were all working, I'm just saying. The sister was legal because she was born here. And he could have gotten legal citizenship if his mom filled out the papers. So there was an opportunity there where the kids brought here could have gotten DACA citizenship or something. So, but she didn't. She was ignorant about that she could have done that. So he was illegal the whole time. And he was using public services. The public services are available to illegal immigrants. I'm just saying. But he knew a lot of other illegal immigrants that were also getting benefits. I'm just saying. But of course, we live in a predominantly blue state. So maybe in another state, it would have been different. So again, it could be regional, you know. And that's it's just bringing in more nuance to the conversation, right? You know, she's adamant that they're not even eligible, but they're getting a lot of benefits, you know. And a lot of people want to hire them because they're more inexpensive and things like that. But also, too, my ex-boyfriend, I don't attribute the fact that he was a control freak, a drunk, or violent to the fact that he was an illegal immigrant. Because there's too many, obviously, citizens that have those same exact characteristics that are violent and destructive, right? But the fact is that the cops didn't give a shit. that he was threatening his girlfriend. Cops, a lot of times cops are abusers themselves. I'm just saying, I'm just gonna sprinkle in some more nuance to the conversation, right? Cops are violent themselves. A lot of times people say, don't date those mofos if you can help it. You know, that PTSD and they're violent, you know, who do you turn to? No one, because it's a good old boys club and they're not held to account, right? So if they act problematic, you're screwed, right? They didn't give a shit that he was violent towards me. And he had already had a criminal record even before he met my ass, right? Of course, you know, I found all this out as I got to know him and all this, but, and cops didn't give a shit. They can give a fuck. Cops are horrible when it comes to domestic abuse issues. I mean, I'm not one of those defund the police people. I'm one of those reform the police people and give them more money so they can be reformed. I'm just saying. And one of the issues they need to be reformed on is how they approach and handle domestic abuse, because they're utterly clueless. So they didn't do shit. They couldn't give a shit that he, you know, was threatening his, you know, girlfriend. But what happened is that in one of his drunken rants and, you know, rages, he ended up getting in a fight, because he was getting in a fight with mofos all the time, right? When he drank, because he was a belligerent, violent drunk, right? He got in a fight with a retired cop, and that's when they nailed his ass. That's when the cops all of a sudden gave a shit. I'm just saying, okay? I'm just throwing more nuance in there for you. Now, like, Trump has declared federal law that they're enforcing the illegality of immigration, right? And like, but I'm just saying, you know, this was before Trump got in office, and they could give a shit. I'm just saying, okay? They didn't give a shit. I'm just, you know, like, even with women dealing with American citizens that are violent, they don't give a shit. I'm just saying, okay? But anyway, that was another issue. So this lady is not 100% accurate, but a lot of people have also a lot of negative stereotypes about African Americans too. So they don't hire them, and they know that illegal immigrants. I worked with a lot of them, really hardworking. A lot of them are really good people, law-abiding citizens. I'm just saying, and another point I was trying to make is that, because I worked in the restaurant industry, and there's a lot of illegal immigrants in the restaurant industry. But 2 points I want to make is that instead of the white people attacking federal officers, right, they should exert their energies to getting rid of the bureaucratic backlog, to making the law-abiding citizens legal. You know, because there's a lot of really hardworking people that have been here forever, and they're really never caused any problems, really family-oriented, community-oriented, and all this stuff. Make those people legal citizens, you know? I mean, it's possible that I'm hearing, again, because depending on which bubble you're in, I'm hearing that ICE enforcement's just grabbing any kind of illegal immigrants, no matter who or what, you know, which I don't think is logistically sustainable. I mean, I feel like a more humane approach would be to financially punish companies that hire them, because if companies legally aren't going to be held to account to hiring them, you're not going to get rid of the problem, right? So you need to. That's a more humane way to de-incentivize illegal immigrants coming here. They can't find work, right? But you know, I don't know if the Trump administration is cracking down on that or doing that, you know. And so I don't think this aggressive militaristic approach is really going to work. It's a multifaceted issue that needs multifaceted solutions, right? And I feel like just de-incentivizing them coming here in the first place is a much more humane thing to do, as opposed to, you know, trying to logistically, you know, get millions of people out of the country. I don't even know, like, I don't even think that's going to work. I just, you know, that's the truth. But anyway, and just make it, you know, require the people that are here to speak English. You know, the more you like turn a blind eye to it and are avoidant about it, the more you're going to have whole communities that don't even speak English here. But require them to, if they want to stay in the country, require them to go through the processes and procedures and make it easier to do so for the law-abiding, good people, Like, there's so many other things that these, liberals could be doing to support, the law-abiding and good illegal immigrants that have come here than attacking ICE officers. It's so inefficient, so stupid, and so just as bad as what they say Trump is doing. So I'm just saying, and I don't know, these issues are really complicated, and each case is different, Most definitely get rid of the criminals. Obviously, we don't want criminals here, we already have enough of our own. We don't need new ones. I'm just saying. But there's so many more non-violent and logistically efficient approaches that can be taken if people can talk amongst each other, how to solve these problems. I'm just saying.
Everybody's talking about Black people right now. But let me tell you something, baby. Black immigrants are damn near erased from the conversations about immigration in our country. You know the families that are locked up by ICE that you see on the news?
Kept in family detention centers.
Almost half of the family locked up right now are Haitian.
44% of the families in immigration detention right now are Haitian.
My family's Haitian, Haiti. And this is insane. This is devastating. And here's the real tea. Every shitty thing that happens in the immigration system is even shittier for Black immigrants, no matter what country they come from. Black immigrants are nearly 3 times more likely to be detained and deported on an alleged criminal offense.
Yep, we're just 7% of the non-citizen population in the US, but make up 20% of immigrants fighting deportation.
Why? Because Black communities are over-policed, and cops transfer immigrants to ICE. And there is no evidence that Black immigrants commit more crimes than any other immigrant population.
You have to bring up nuance. These issues are really, really complicated, okay? And being some righteous, indignant person who just shuts down all conversation is not going to solve the problem. And it just lets the powers that be manipulate you. If you're so rigid in your thinking, you need to be flexible and adaptable in your thinking, because if you're just so rigid and just like the saying goes, if you're not flexible, you break. Like if in the wind, and we're going through really tumultuous, windy times right now, and if you're not flexible, you mofo break, and so. I personally feel like there's I work with a lot of illegal immigrants in my life, and in various capacities and stuff like that. And a lot of them are more Hispanic countries, whatever, but they're really hardworking. They're really family oriented, and a lot of them, some of them probably aren't, but and I can see why people can hire really good laborers for really cheap. So they probably hire them over local Americans, right? Because they don't want to pay that much, and they know they're probably going to get a really hardworking. And also because people are immigrants, they can manipulate them and control them more. They can take advantage of them more because they can threaten immigration and stuff against them. That happens too. That's a whole other issue where they're hired at these really ridiculously cheap rates. They can be manipulated and controlled because they're in a situation of vulnerability because they're illegal. That's a whole other thing. I'm just saying, this issue is really complicated, dude. And people are being abused and manipulated even as illegal immigrants in this country. I've seen it. Okay, I'm just saying. Two truths can be true at the same time, and people need to recognize this so they're not so, duped by the greedy motherfuckers that are fucking all of us over. I'm just saying, whatever. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble and get lost in this conversation, but the whole point of this video is to bring up against these topics are really complicated, they're really nuanced, there's a whole bunch of multifaceted factors contributing to them, and just to have such a rigid view, I feel like is playing into the hands of those that want to manipulate and control